Well, welcome to Telling the Show.
Hello, we're back.
Right.
Uh,
Which episode is this?
We're on number 6. We're
We're on
almost,
6. Wow.
yeah.
Can't believe this. I mean, we've 6 episodes. I thought we had more than that. I'm losing my mind now. I thought we
It,
were on 8.
oh, it could be 8. Maybe I didn't write some down.
Yeah, clearly, the pandemic is taking its toll on our brains here. But needless to say, we're a different kind of podcast.
Totally different. We don't know how many we've had.
I mean, we've only had, what, three or 4 guests at this point?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, so, I mean, it's been a while. So,
Yeah.
what's new in your world?
Oh, wow. So, among other things, I'm also a composer, and I recently just finished composing the score for an 80-minute independent sci-fi movie. And I got to attend the cast and crew premiere and got to see my name on the big screen.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And interesting thing is composing music for film is very much like screenwriting. I mean, technically it qualifies as a crew position and it's in post-production, but it still has that element of creating something that's supposed to contribute to a larger whole. And whereas screenwriting is foundational, music is more like that intangible coat of paint that tells the audience what to feel. And it's got to do a whole lot of stuff, just like dialogue and character have multiple tasks it has to achieve within a screenplay in order to attract a reader. Music has to support an image, support a director's vision. It has to, it can't call attention to itself. It has to establish an identity for a film. It has to be, in many ways, the blood of the film to move the emotions along. So it's got a lot that it needs to do. So like any other role in film, you have to multitask a bit, and more so on independent film.
That's awesome. What did it feel like? What was your visceral reaction to seeing your name up on the titles?
Oh, it was a thrill. It was definitely a thrill. But more important than that, bigger than seeing my name up there, which is just like icing on the cake. The cake is when the music works and it supports the scene and it just does what it's supposed to and everybody gets behind it. Now when I talked to all the people, the cast and crew and their families, they were so complimentary of the work that I had done and shocked at how quickly I was able to work at that. But yeah, I was able to turn it around quickly, but then I didn't have to do a lot of things that normal composers have to do. And, if we're talking, well, not using the word normal composer or term probably doesn't make as much sense because composers, more traditionally speaking, if you're working with orchestras, you have to have your orchestration teams or yourself. You have to write all those notes down on actual staff paper for each instrument, right in their note range, and be able to have it legible and clear, and then get players to read that back and sight read and perform that with an actual instrument. Whereas I'm more in the electronic area, like several composers, where it's me, a MIDI keyboard, software, and a computer, and access to really good samples. A lot of people will tell you that's, there's the biggest difference there is the sound, because if you get a traditional orchestra, and someday I hope to be able to have that experience of writing for an orchestra, I'll have to have a lot of help because there's a lot I don't know. But it's different doing that than having just I feel like almost like kind of a poser in a way because I did it with samples, but because it's a film set in the future, set in sci-fi, I always feel something like sampled instruments or synthesizer or electronic instruments tend to play well with the sci-fi environment. So if it doesn't sound quite like it's real, then it's okay for this kind of film. Although I will say we had a really great cello sound in it, and I used it pretty frequently in the score and bounced it against a lot of different, more synth-like instruments. And it worked out really well, I thought.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, what's new in your world?
Well, this week I am currently in where am I? Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. And I'm out with the national tour of Stomp, and I am serving as their COVID compliance officer, which is a new position to this community. So it's been really cool, and the show's really cool. The people are super talented, and yeah, it's a good time. It's great to be back working and out on the road, and yeah, it's good times. Good
I was about to
times.
say live from Raleigh, Durham.
Yeah.
It's Denise Zeiler.
Yep, in my hotel room. So
And you sound
cool.
really good for being in your hotel room.
See, I brought my whole studio with me. Everybody's
Yeah.
like, "What's in that box?" And I'm like, "Never you mind. It's mine."
She's secretly doing ASMR videos
That's right.
with a Harvey Firestein voice.
I could do that. I could do that.
We got to do it. We got to do a voiceover driven kind of a thing at some point,
Absolutely.
just to have fun.
But when we were talking about what to do for this episode, you mentioned something that I had never heard of before. And
Wow.
I'd never heard of it. And it's called imposter syndrome. And I started doing some research on it. And I found out that it's a concept originally developed in 1978 by psychologist Pauline Rose Clance and Suzanne Imes. And it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And I started to do some more research into it to see, like, is it something that's prevalent today, or is this something that, is not so much out there in the world today? And so many people has said that this is a problem for them. So somebody like Viola Davis, former First Lady Michelle Obama, have all confessed to having these feelings. And I was like, well, at least that puts me in great company. So,
well, and I mentioned earlier how I felt like such a poser from, the whole point of, just from being a composer.
yeah.
Because I'm not traditionally trained, and, someone always knows more about the craft of it. And it still comes down to the fact, this is what I reconciled in my head about, writing music for a movie. As long as you have ideas and know how to get it done and work your ass off, and if the director trusts you, which mine obviously did, and I trust her, and, and her feedback, and her, steering things the way she needed it to be, and getting out of me what she needed, and vice versa. We had a good rapport. Then it doesn't matter if you can do the job. It really shouldn't matter. But it's hard to get away from that feeling. And we can go further into defining it and how we both deal with it here in a little bit.
Yeah, let's actually jump into it, and then we'll
sure.
and end with the challenge I have for you.
Oh lordy. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If we're gonna do that, then let's and you and your evil laugh. You got to use that on Halloween. We're definitely we got to record a Halloween episode here this year. But in the case, let's define what imposter syndrome is. It's the experience of feeling like a phony. You feel as though at any moment you are going to be found out as a fraud. They know that I'm not worth my salt, that I can't do a thing, that I don't know what I'm doing. Which, William Goldman, and this is paraphrasing the title of his book about screenwriting, is that, or paraphrasing what he said in the book, nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
So if you can emotionally relativize that in your head, then you're on an even playing field. At least theoretically.
It's all theoretical. No, I'm joking.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so strange. And it's, when we started talking about it and I started learning more about it, I was like, not only has this been in my writing career, but this has been in my arts career. This has been in my vocal career. You know what I mean? This is something that's followed me my entire life. And I was talking to some colleagues about it, and we are all of the generation when, it was not that it wasn't encouraged, but it was a very realistic view of the arts, and everybody saying, like, you know what, you're not talented enough to make it. You're not talented enough to make it. And that's pretty much what we heard our entire lives growing up, because it was just not a it wasn't encouraged. Let's just say that. um Now my family has been a different story. They would encourage me to a point, but it was a very realistic encouragement, like have something to fall back on, you know?
It was a mix of that, of the same for me. Although I mean, for some reason, if it wasn't one thing and it wasn't going to work, I'd find another way. I've never believed that you have to stop trying to have some sort of a life in the arts if you really, really want it bad enough. You will find a way. If you've made up your mind, there's
Hmm.
going to be some kind of way. And there's always going to be somebody telling you you're not good enough. And it's hard to understand them psychologically, because it's a very, you know, if you find it hard to read people like I do from time to time, it's you work from an emotional, visceral response to somebody telling you that. You get angry, and it either does one of two things: it puts you in shell shock and makes you a shrieking violet, all the analogies that you can think of for that kind of thing, and you withdraw from the idea that you can do this kind of thing because you don't think you're good enough, or you feel like you can put yourself to the test and expect a good outcome. Or you go the other way and say you fight harder. It's like, no one's going to tell me that, or deny me any opportunity that I think I should have.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you approach it in a healthy way, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But there's all the decisions from there on both sides that, and this is just me thinking, I'm not a trained psychologist in any way, shape, or form, but all the decisions you make from there, depending upon your moral compass, will define what your success level is, I think.
Yeah. And it's very strange, because like I play devil advocate to myself very often. So I will say, like, I may not be the best writer, but I do have creative ideas. Um, and a lot of people will, I don't know where you actually stand on this, but I think you have to have talent to be a writer, but I think it's also a learned skill. So you need the creativity and the kind of mind that can create and unique ideas, and that whole shebang. But it's also a learned skill. So you can take that idea and then what you do with it. So I think what my personal doubt comes from is that actual idea part. The writing part, yeah, I mean, you're a writer. It's gonna happen. You're gonna get criticized for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
But
sadly.
it's that creative part that I find, it are my ideas good? That's where I have that self-doubt.
It's from a screenwriting perspective, because of course for this podcast we have to blend imposter syndrome with screenwriting.
Right.
Be- because it's such a lonely craft unless you have a writing partner, and even then you're still having to face the blank page. You'll have deadlines. You can find your way towards having something that you have to deliver, and when people love it, it's like they don't see all the hours you spend
Yeah.
nagging at yourself, racking your brain for ideas, trying to figure out how to write a phrase that doesn't sound like it's going to take you out of the page. And they look at it and they think it's magic. They see the credit on the screen,
Right.
and they'll never know the hours you spent toiling and doubting whether or not you're going into any sort of direction. It's like there's no, I mean, this is when you start, networking with friends who have the same craft, and you start talking to them, because then you can at least, vent or try to navigate your way around it. They may have an idea, that sort of thing. So it doesn't have to be a lonely craft, but at the same time, all of those pieces, that loneliness, that, that challenge, that screenwriting can be. And when you've delivered something, when you've done it and you've delivered it in such a way that it is accepted and people want to make it into something, you still feel like, okay, for all that work, you can hardly believe it's real, because you know down in the trenches what it was really like.
Yeah, 100%. And we've actually gone through many of the common elements of this imposter syndrome, but I do
Yeah.
want to, yeah, I know we kind of jumped around, but let me go through them just so our listeners can, make their own checklist.
Oh yeah.
So self-doubt. Oh, yep,
Mhm.
we've covered that one.
Right.
Um, an inability to realistically assess your competence and skills. I'm not so sure about that one on me, but I don't know. Some days I think I'm awesome. Sometimes I'm like, oh God, did I write that? Um,
I have to say that I think everybody at one point or another, if I'd rather be a humble human being and
right,
maybe have some inability to assess my competence. But you and I have come from a Master's of Fine Arts program where we've taken the time to learn the craft. That may
right,
not get us like a job, but we know what it means to us. We know what our competence level is. I had a conversation with one of the colleagues from our program some months back, and she kept trying to tell me, you don't have to apologize or say that you're totally qualified to talk about this. We went through the same program. I know what you know, and I know you're qualified to give me notes. So don't try to backpedal or downplay it. Just give me the straight dope. Which was nice of her to say, because
yeah,
then it was like, okay, for the first time in my head, a light bulb went off. It's like, okay, I am qualified. It's just, what it means to anyone else, whatever they take from it or whatever. But I know what it meant to me. I know the work I put in.
I'm sure that actually felt good for you too.
It felt nice to have someone else validate it. But if you're doing this for someone else to validate you and don't have enough validation in yourself, then you need to work on that, which is kind of what we're
Right,
talking about here, right?
right, yeah, and that would be either that fear that you won't live up to expectations, yours or someone else's,
Mm.
or that sabotaging your own success, which like I know I don't do, but I feel like I do, just in that negative thought space, like, ugh, why am I writing this? No one's ever going to read it. But then,
Well,
the
and
other,
that I'm sorry, that dovetails right into berating your performance, which is on our checklist. And you can't, you know, you can't do that to yourself. You shouldn't try. I think more often than not, it's not just going through negative processes, but sometimes it's so automatic, it's thoughtless to someone. And I've suffered from that, where I just, without thinking, I'm automatically doing all these things,
yeah,
which the end goal ends up being sabotaging your own success and not even know it. It's like, how do I recognize that with myself? And the sad fact is, it's more of the social function of making the mistake and learning from it, I think.
absolutely. And something we talked about on, I think it was our first episode, was what do you consider to be your success story? Like, what is success to you? And I think we're kind of in line with this one, but like for me, it depends. So, um, writing wise, it's a really good story. It's a really good question. I think you really need to sit down and, have that conversation with yourself. What does success mean for you? Like, do I need to win an Oscar? No. Or, a WGA award? No. It would be really cool if I did, but I don't need that. I think success to me is not even selling a script. It's having somebody have an emotional reaction. That is what makes me a successful writer. Um
And
yeah,
I would think that would make you a successful filmmaker in general. I mean, that's the beauty of the term screenwriter or composer or director. If you have done anything in the film space,
yeah.
then you're a filmmaker.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
it's I think it would be a little bit different in theater. You can't say, that, any one subcomponent of playwriting makes you a playwright. But, and same for screenwriting. But if you have engage in any activity, if you're a stage manager or you're um, any part of the tech theater portion of it, you'd have to school me on these terms on the pro level, but you're still part of the theater.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I mean, I think that's the great thing about it. So you don't have to necessarily just identify as any one thing. And looking at it from a dynamic perspective, you know, getting to be a part of it, being able to make someone feel something, it's a huge responsibility, but it's also, I mean, on the one hand, it sounds like you like to manipulate people if you say that, you know, that kind of thing. But I think what you like to entertain. There's a difference between manipulating and entertain. If you can entertain someone, if you're a born entertainer, no matter what, you know, there's that part of you that's always going to want to do it. I think I lost my own train of thought there, but at the same time, I mean, it's hard when it's like, it's that kind of like, you know, when you say you're a screenwriter or you say you're, you know, this role, that role, and that in and of itself can be a goal so lofty that people think you will never achieve them. And because there's that mindset out there, because there's such competition, and because there's such challenge getting in, and because I think in the last 20 years we've seen less and less glamorization of the motion picture industry because of social media, because there's more information out there now about the pitfalls and the kind of, you know, damaging things people can do. Plus, some people have just behaved so badly without being able to really cover it up very well that it's very clear the kind of, you know, mindset that can exist out there. Now, of course, that's not everybody in the entertainment industry. That's just a few people who have a certain celebrity level. It's different. Celebrity existence is not entertainment, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
It's two different things.
Yeah.
But because there's such a high pedestal put upon for celebrity existence, you know, everyone still feels like that's just so far away. Like everything is far away. I mean, you live somewhere here elsewhere in the nation other than LA, it might as well be a world away.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you, because like neither of us are in LA, and
no,
I feel like, you know, when I'm sitting down and I'm writing, I'm writing more for myself now than I am for other people, but I'm writing with that goal in mind that I'm going to make this myself. So, because I do feel that separation, and yeah, I don't know what else to say about it, but yeah, I 100% agree. And I feel like even LA writers at times will probably feel that same anxiety of separation, because, you know, like me, I'm not a schmoozer. So even if I was in LA and I was going to these, you know, meet and greet events, I don't know if I would walk up to somebody and be like, "Hey, how you doing?" You know what I mean? It's just, it's not me. It's not what I'm good at.
And that honestly is why I recommend that anybody trying to get into the craft of screenwriting go to a film festival, especially something like the Austin Film Festival that's coming up. It's primarily geared towards screenwriters. Although this year I know it might be a challenge for people to go because of the pandemic. It was entirely virtual last year. I'm not even entirely sure that I'll be able to go on that basis. And I live in Texas. But when I've gone there, I think I have this, you know, ability to be a social butterfly and talk with multiple people and get to know people. I'm a little shy by nature early on, but once I start introducing myself and that sort of thing, you know, it forces me, those festivals, to network and to, you know, learn how to schmooze. If anything, that is very critical as part of the craft, is understanding the social function of it. And you get a bunch of writers in the room and some alcohol, that's obviously going to be able to create a social experience for people. So, and I'm no expert at the whole navigating the festival experience, because I've only been a handful of times, but I do think that, you know, that's another thing that it can develop imposter syndrome, or be a latent function of having imposter syndrome, is that you don't want to come across false to people, right? So,
right.
And because, you know, the sad fact is screenwriting is a lot like dating, you know, especially on the, like, when you've got something you've created, now you're trying to peddle your wares, whether you're going to festivals or trying to do, you know, pitch meetings and stuff like that. Because they told us in the program that when you're going to meet with somebody the first time, you're not talking about your script, you're talking about yourself. They want to get to know you.
Yeah.
And so, but, and, you know, honestly, they get to know you and your personality. I'm like, oh God, are they going to think I'm nuts? Or, you know, it's, or worse, they're not going to think they think I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. They're going to think I've got a booger up my nose or something. It's
Right.
just, you know,
Right.
it's, all those same feelings. It's so much like, you know, there's this person you're attracted to, you carry a torch, you see them from afar, but you haven't really gotten to know them. I mean, is the answer to simply just have a conversation and find out if you're even gonna, you know, this even makes sense for you?
Right.
I mean, that's the answer in dating. I don't know that it makes as much sense in screenwriting, because there's another layer and a level to it of entrepreneurship. There's that level of, it's almost, again, like a job interview. It's all those things, all those elements. And it's incessant because you're constantly having to make yourself relevant in the field, right?
And relevance is a huge aspect of it, because if you have that fear or concern that you will not remain relevant, that also leads to this anxiety of, or am I an imposter in this industry?
Right. And I think one of the best things anybody can do is just, this is why screenwriting groups are such a great idea, not just from the writing perspective of getting feedback and networking with people, but, if you develop a friendship with anyone in those groups, you can talk through things like this, like the more social aspects of the business, because it is a social business. And then you can have the experience of talking to them just on a one-on-one. It's like, I don't know how to approach this. I don't know how to, work this out. And then maybe they know something, or you can find research with them and then partner with them to practice just handshakes and meetings and conversations, and then, figure out how to navigate that. And that way your confidence level builds.
And that aspect of it, like getting that comfortable with talking to people that are in our peer group, this podcast has helped me a lot with that, because if I'm in my theater world, I know my stuff. And as much as you may have celebrities that do theater, they are just people. So I don't treat them any differently. Let's say I don't treat them, and I do, but I mean, not like I don't bow down to them. I just, I treat them differently because they're talent and I'm a technician. So, but as far as like being able to talk to other writers and other people in the industry, it's getting easier. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's just, I'm not totally comfortable with it. Because I have that false sense of like, oh God, they're going to see right through me,
Well, and in your situation, and I think it's the same if you're like on set in production for a film. You concentrate on your job, you do your job, you keep that straight, and just as long as you do that and don't get spun up with, all of that other stuff around about, the celebrity people and all that stuff, and just, try to relax and do the best job that you've been assigned or hired to do, then you don't have to worry about, any of that other stuff. And you're right, they are just people, and overreacting is half the reason that so many of them feel so on edge. Last thing I want is for someone to be uncomfortable around me.
You say that, but I don't know if that's true. No, I'm joking. You live to make a room uncomfortable now.
Oh my God. That's what is that? Who told you? No, I'm kidding.
I have my sources. They shall remain unnamed.
Oh, good Lord. This is, if for any of our listeners, it's so not true. I'm more afraid of you than you are of me. Trust me.
Right.
It could be any one of those things. I think we've been talking about, we know what imposter syndrome is.
Yes.
And how to deal with it. And I think what we're doing right now by talking about this, just to talk about it, because this is an important component of building confidence for someone, not just in screenwriting, but in the arts, but for screenwriters specifically. It's like we're all hobbits. We like our space. We don't like to go out, and getting out to an adventure. It's like hearing heeding the call, the heroes of the hero's journey, not to, wax Chris Vogler on that. But by talking about it, I think just having the conversation, it's like anytime we have a problem in screenwriting, if I have a problem with something, I'm trying to work it out, then I'll take a fresh page in my like Microsoft Word, And that's not where I write, but if I'm doing pre-writing, I might do it there. And I just start asking myself questions. Why am I feeling like this? Why is this? Why is that? And start trying to answer those questions as best I can. And so it's like journaling in many ways.
Yeah.
It's the act of trying to answer the question in whatever way that makes sense. And I think the conversation, especially with colleagues, and asking the right person kind of helps, I think, too. But if we share our thoughts and experiences, we learn we're not alone. And if we've made a mistake, at least we can talk about processing what that mistake was instead of reliving it, figuring out what to do about it, how to apply it going forward.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, I'm there with you. Like, we have this podcast, so
Yeah.
we have a way to impart what we know, or what we think we know, or what we hope to know. You know.
I'm not sure. I'm riding your crazy train.
Yeah, that
It's
was
going
a
off the
little.
rails.
It was going off the rails. I'm sorry. I'm
No, I'm
it's
teasing
a
you, of
time
course.
zone difference. That's what I'm going to blame it on from now on.
Yeah, it's better that than blaming it on alcohol. I'm just saying.
That's true. Because in talking with other screenwriters, like, we've come up with things that I'm sure we thought we were the only ones that felt that way, and we're clearly not. you know, but what I meant by us having this podcast is that we actually do some things really well. We have this podcast. We are able to answer the questions, or ask the questions of our guests that most people don't get asked. And, that's been a saving grace for us. So, we do have high points. So we got to build on those high points and always continue to learn.
Right. And I want to be careful about using the term high points, though, because I don't think there's any low points to us. I think that, it's better to be an incomplete human being, in my opinion, only because, you still have room to grow. You still have, you can learn. And this is the other side of it. If you think you know everything, then you're going to stagnate. You're going to just sit somewhere like a veal and not do anything, because you think you've executed it all. And, there's always something new you can learn. That's the beauty of work in the arts, whether it be writing or otherwise, especially screenwriting, because you get the chance to learn something new that you didn't already know. I mean, at one point, if you have an idea, you're going to do research on it. You're going to learn a little bit more about it, unless you're basing it off of personal experience. But you could still learn something because you're reflecting on personal experience. And I truly recommend that no one should really write their autobiography unless they just need that kind of therapy, which writing tends to be. Which it can be therapy for imposter syndrome too. That's entirely possible.
True. Yeah.
So, but I think your point about high points, though, saying it another way, the American Psychological Association suggests that to remember what you do well. And like you're saying, we have this podcast, we're trying to impart knowledge. We're trying to learn too. And I think if we react more as, sponges rather than rocks, we've got, we can absorb more. And that's really the worst analogy I've ever come up with in my life. Wow.
Hey, today is a challenge. Let's just put it that way. Today is a challenge. We each have been there today.
Oh yeah. You know what? I almost forgot to mention. You sent this to me when I after we talked about the imposter syndrome as a possible topic. And there's a test online you can actually self-administer.
Yes, and we will post that. I will post that link.
Cool. And we took it ourselves too. So
sure did.
Denise, do you feel like sharing how's yours turned out?
So I got an 82, which is really high. And let me see if I can read to you what it says. Bless you.
Thank you. That was a cough, but I appreciate it.
Oh, sorry. Any score higher than 80 means the respondent often has intense IP experiences. The higher the score, the more frequently and seriously the imposter phenomenon interferes in a person's life. So Yeah, that's pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
When I do it, I do it all the way.
Well, do you find it's true? Has it inhibited you from your arts career at all?
Writing, yes. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. And I, you know, it's very strange. Like I always say to you, this is a safe space. You know, we can say whatever.
Hmm. Yeah.
um, I often feel that it's like I feel like I'm meant to do this. You know, like I have that intense feeling, but when I take a step back and I go, well, what am I doing? Like, I often feel like I'm not doing enough, like, to
Mm.
accomplish my goals that I know I have. Um, but like, I don't feel it's not that I feel like I'm not supposed to be here. It's just that I feel like I'm not living up to the expectation. Like, I'm not doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing to be able to do what I want to do, if that makes sense. So I'm not living up to the potential. I'm not living up to the standards that I hold or that everybody else holds. And it's that like 50% of that and 50% of um, fear of failure, So like if somebody reads my work and they're like, oh my God, that was like a kindergartner could have wrote that better, you know? um, uh, that's my imposter syndrome struggles.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
and at the same, hey, for what it's worth, I think you've got more chutzpah than like any three people, to be honest.
Thank
Um,
you.
you're welcome. And we're both born entertainers,
Mm-hmm.
hence why we do what we do in different ways, um, and found comfortable strengths on that. And um, I think you have just as much right to be anywhere near there as anybody. Just as much right. I mean, writing doesn't really belong to one exclusive. Is not exclusive to anybody, right?
Right.
Anybody can do it. Anybody has an equal chance. Now, of course, the sales portion of it, that's all aside from it. But um, we write because it's a part of us. We create because it's a part of us, and nobody can take that away from it. I mean, your spirit can be battered by something, life experience, naysayers, self-doubt, like imposter syndrome likes to bestow on us. But where does that come from? Why do we have it? Those are the questions we each have to ask ourselves as we go into it. And um and making it personal, as we can. It's I think I don't think anyone can take away your right to be, what you feel, you are inside. Like if you look at it purely from a positive experience perspective, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can be negative about the entertainment industry. There's a lot of negative stuff about screenwriting because it's such a challenge. But
Mhm.
the part of it is, what does it fulfill for you? What role does it play in you know, um, your overall being? Right. For me, it's like the chance to make somebody, like the kind of movies I like to write are kind of thrill rides, that kind of thing, or just something with like, I try to go high concept as often as I can. That doesn't mean I hit it every time at all. I'd say maybe 10% of the time I come up with an idea that's maybe high concept, but my thought process is to give you a character in this extraordinary situation, have you enjoy the ride, and maybe sneak an idea in there or two sometimes, and not to get heavy handed, because topical pictures can be very hard to sell. But for me, getting that kick out of knowing that they may not even know or care who wrote it, but then I know that people enjoyed what I wrote. It's kind of like what you were saying earlier. But and there were moments along the way where I had stars in my eyes. I was a total fanboy when I was
Right.
first learning to write. And I was writing stuff that I swear probably could be today qualified as the worst version of fan fiction that's possible. But I was growing. And I also was very disappointed that I wasn't growing fast enough. And looking back on it, I was surprised that I wasn't, encouraged to, read more challenging material like, Kurt Vonnegut and stuff like that in high school. I knew other people that were reading it, but I wasn't.
Right.
And I don't know why. So I inevitably had to figure out how to push myself and, see other kinds of forms of writing. It's what led me to start reading Michael Crichton pretty regularly. I mean, the man has a bibliography in his novels for
Right.
fictional freaking novels. And I'm like, this guy's next level. And I'm like, shit, I could do this. As soon as you say to yourself, I could do this. And when you're young, you've got the hubris to think that you can. And I think, time and wisdom give you that, and life, experiencing all that can give you that, give you those conclusions you were searching for in your youth. And then if you still want to write, if you're still inspired to write, then it's still a part of you. And if you still do it, whether it goes anywhere, no one can take away from you that spirit of being able to do it.
Yeah, Yeah, I'll agree with that. I will agree with that. What was
I sound like I know what the hell I'm talking about.
You do. What was your score? I want to know what your score was.
Oh, my score. I had a 64, so I still feel it. I still feel that way. And it makes me wonder if I'm not a little more honest with myself on some answering these questions. I hate these kind of questions. I hate these tests. Like,
Yes.
like these tests, the Myers-Briggs ones, the StrengthsFinder tests.
Yep.
I'll freely go on record as saying, yeah, they fill a specific need and a quantification of something, but too many people use it to define people because that's the only way that they can. And I don't like that. I think you are defined by what you do rather than something that's measured.
100% agree.
And if you do something and then you're reflecting on it with something like this, great, quantifying it and great, what do you learn from that? Well, I learned from that I still feel like there are things about myself that I had all that self-doubt, and I have to work on that on a regular basis. I think my score is probably more in your range. I don't know if I feel it intensely. But I'm always afraid that somehow whatever good cards I've got from what I've been able to create, it's going to go away because the opportunities are going to dry up, or I'm going to say something or be a failure at something or not deliver. It wasn't all that long ago after I got my bachelor's degree that I felt like that was happening to me. I didn't know enough. I didn't know enough people. Right. And it took some reflection to figure out that I was trying to navigate my own way and everybody else is, because they say there's no one wrong way to get to where you want to go. It just takes a little bit, and you're going to, I think my biggest problem was a pretty immature streak. I had a lot of growing up to do when I came out of college, and I still had to learn about paying my dues, that sort of thing. And just, no one starts out at the top unless you go and do it on your own independently. But all that learning, all that life experience, there's benefits to that, because I honestly, people who get stars in their eyes and go right out to moving to LA before they really have taken some time to learn how to do certain things, put themselves at a potential to have the worst version of imposter syndrome you could even think of, to the point that, they end up penniless, homeless, or worse.
Right. Yeah.
So it's, if you think you've got something and you can make it, and somebody, you have connections, that's one thing. But if you've got, if there's certain things you don't have, then it's always a good idea to find out, what you need to know, gather what you need to know, and then execute it. Just create the content, because honestly, nowadays it's democratized. Everybody from like California is moving here to Texas.
Yeah.
They're moving away from California. I think the only thing, and we've discussed this in other podcasts, that the future of the business could really dramatically change, especially since the pandemic. But the bottom line at the end of all of this is, whatever future it is, right now, the technology is democratized. You can write from anywhere, you can make from anywhere. And I was talking about this with a friend of mine who's actually in LA and had to move like twice because of the fires. And I told him about all the stuff that I was doing, which I'm doing a lot of different things, learning different areas like pre through post production, skills, and some of them masked and I use in my, survival job, as you might call it. And he said, if you can do all of that, you're ahead of everybody out here, because everybody goes to LA to do one thing.
Right.
And that's it. And that never made sense to me. Be dynamic, learn other parts, learn other roles, because you've got to be able to respect that, especially if you're ever going to be in a leadership position like a producer, or if you're going to direct a film. Have some idea of what other people have to do in their jobs.
Yeah.
And so you can respect them for it. I mean, there's a lot about acting I don't know, but there's a lot of it I intuitively understand. But enough to be able to respect that if I need to get you somewhere for the kind of role you want to or performance you want to deliver, we're going to figure it out.
Right.
That's for sure. And I can guide you to see what the larger vision is. But there's, at a certain point, you just have to let the actor do their job and know that they know their job better than you, even if you have some understanding of it. Same with like directors of photography. And there's plenty of those guys that are in photography that don't want to even write. They don't want to go anywhere near final draft. So,
and that's something I look for in assistants is I want to see a resume that's diverse. I don't want you to only do one thing. I want you to experience many things, so then you'll be more helpful to the person that you're assisting. So,
well, and that was the goal of going to college, right? They want you to become a well-rounded human being coming out of this, not just to have a degree that says you learned from this particular discipline. That's it.
Yeah.
Because that's a good way to, if you come out just learning one thing, but not all these other things that you need to know, which is why college is such a great social experience, or is supposed to be anyway. Then you're setting yourself up for like imposter syndrome right there before you go out into a world of work, that sort of thing.
And I know we've had a very, very heavy episode today, but I do have a challenge for you.
Oh, oh crap.
I have 20 of some of the most famous log lines in the history of modern cinema. And I have 1 minute on my timer.
Oh, go ahead.
And I would like to see how many of these you can guess the title of the film from their famous log line.
All right.
Are you ready?
No, but let's do it anyway.
Okay. I will start the timer at the end of my first end of the first log line.
Okay.
Okay. A cowboy doll is profoundly threatened and jealous when a new spaceman action figure supplants him as top toy in a boy's room.
Toy Story.
Yes. A spirited farm boy joins a rebellion to save a princess from a sinister imperial enforcer and the galaxy from a planet-destroying weapon.
Star Wars.
Yes. A young police officer must prevent a bomb exploding aboard a city bus by keeping its speed above 50 miles per hour.
Speed.
Yeah. When man and wife assassins discover they are working for rival agencies, they have to decide whether to put love ahead of business.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yes. A computer hacker learns from mysterious rebels about the true nature of his reality and his role in the war against its controllers.
The Matrix.
An airhead blonde goes to Harvard Law School.
Legally Blonde.
A tough principal takes revolutionary measures to clean up a notoriously dangerous inner-city New Jersey high school.
New Jersey. I was going to say it's either the principal or Lean on Me.
Lean on Me. Yeah, you got it. A Las Vegas set comedy centered around three groomsmen lose their about-to-be-wed buddy during their drunken misadventures and then must retrace their steps in order to find him.
The Hangover.
Yes, and that was 1 minute. Do you want to keep on going, see if you can get them all?
Yeah, set the timer again. I'll keep going.
Okay.
Or whatever you'd like to do. Sure.
Okay. When his son is swept out to sea, an anxious clownfish embarks on a perilous journey across a treacherous ocean to bring him back.
Finding Nemo.
A Christmas elf goes to New York City.
Elf.
Yeah. After being rescued by a German bounty hunter, a freed slave sets out to rescue his wife from a brutal Mississippi plantation owner.
Django Unchained.
Yes. A young man is transported to the past where he must reunite his parents before he and his future cease to exist.
Back to the Future.
Yes. Hollywood, 1927, a silent movie. George Valentine wonders if the arrival of talking pictures will cause him to fade into oblivion. He sparks with Peppy Miller, a young dancer set for a big break.
Ooh. That sounds like The Artist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When a young boy disappears, his mother, the police chief, and his friends must confront terrifying forces in order to get him back.
Oh, God.
I will tell you it's a TV show.
Oh, okay. Police chief. One more time, please.
When a young boy disappears, his mother, the police chief, and his friends must confront.
Stranger Things.
Yes.
It's Stranger Things, yeah.
Yes. The capo of a New Jersey syndicate goes to a psychiatrist to deal with the changing nature of his business, a wife who no longer trusts him, kids who are growing up, and his murderous extended family.
Oh, wow. Can I get that one more time?
Yeah. The capo of a New Jersey syndicate goes to a psychiatrist to deal with the changing nature of his business, a wife who no longer trusts him, kids who are growing up, and his murderous extended family.
That's tough because that sounds like any number of any gangster movie. Like, it's not The Godfather.
Nope.
I was thinking of Analyze This, but I don't know why you'd bring that one in here. Oh my God.
It was on HBO.
It was on HBO. Oh,
yes.
The Sopranos.
Yes. Okay. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. Okay. The socially awkward head writer of a sketch comedy show must deal with an arrogant new boss and a crazy new star, all while trying to run a successful television show without losing her mind.
30 Rock.
Yes. Lester Burnham, a depressed suburban father in a midlife crisis, decides to turn his hectic life around after becoming infatuated with his daughter's attractive friend.
American Beauty.
Yeah. A young man leads his oddball family and their real estate development business following a securities fraud fiasco that put the father in jail.
One more time on that one.
Yeah. A young man leads his oddball family and their real estate development business following a securities fraud fiasco that put their father in jail.
Is that Schitt's Creek?
No, I thought the same thing.
Okay. Shameless?
No. Arrested Development.
You know what? That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Last one.
Okay.
A man must struggle to travel home for Thanksgiving with an obnoxious slob of a shower curtain ring salesman as his only companion.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, written by the great John Hughes.
Yes. Look, you got them all. Except for...
Well, I didn't get one.
Arrested Development.
Which is, for some reason, that show was never attractive to me, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I couldn't get behind it. You know what? A couple of them are, relatively easy, right? Like Matrix, Speed, Elf. And there's plenty of ones out there. It just makes me wonder of like, I love reading the log lines for movies when it's like, when they're trying really hard in the log line. Because when we were learning log lines in the program, it's like, how do you keep it from being a TV guide thing? It's like, why do you want to tell every single thing in the plot in your log line? A lot of screenwriters hate log lines. It's interesting to hear them say that too, because it's a necessity, like pitching, right?
Yeah.
Like I was trying to think in my head, is she going to drop one for RoboCop or Aliens or something?
You know what? I did. I took those out. I took out all the sci-fi ones because I thought you'd know them all.
Well, clearly, I got so many of the others, and Stranger Things I got, but here's the interesting thing. It's like, when you read that one, it's like I was trying to figure out where the comma was because a distraught mother, a police chief. I'm like, it's like,
Yeah.
is it listing people? And I had
Yeah.
to hear it again to get that, because I thought she was saying that the mom was a police chief.
Police chief. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And then
which,
there's, the cool thing about this that I found was that how simplistic a log line can be. An airhead blonde goes to Harvard Law School. Yeah,
oh
that's
yeah.
the whole movie in one sentence.
Oh, and no question. And Legally Blonde to me is a really, honestly, I thought that was one of the better, a really better, one of the better movies I saw that year, because it was
Yeah.
entertaining. It was damned
Mhm.
entertaining. It was,
Yeah.
um, and it was a great plot. And I mean, it's a familiar situation. Someone who is sort of incomplete, but has it all together.
Right.
Goes into, has something shake their world, and takes them. It's very much a hero's journey. Elle Woods in Legally Blonde goes through the hero's journey. It's almost like a golden fleece kind of a story in a way, because what she really wants, she finds within herself in many ways.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
And I mean, and I'm always going to forever love Star Wars and Back to the Future. And I still think Back to the Future is one of the most complete screenplays possible. It obeys the logic of its rules.
Yeah, it really does. And you'll hear wonderful stories about how awkward it was to pitch that movie.
Yeah. I've heard, and I
Yeah.
know, I read a lot about how Robert Zemeckis was really, he had a partnership with Spielberg to get movies made, but he's like, at that point, Romancing the Stone was one of the only things he had as a hit at the time,
Yeah.
and he's like, if I'm going to make another thing for you, it's
And
got to be a
they
hit.
made Romancing the Stone thinking it wasn't going to be a great movie.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't think anybody knew. And that was like, there used to be a screenwriting scholarship based on the writer Diane Thomas out there. I don't know if it still exists, but man, that was one hell of a screenplay she wrote too.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
damned entertaining movie. And
It's a great movie.
is it just me, or did the 80s have some of the best movies in it? I mean, there's been some
Awesome
great
80s
movies.
movies.
It really unnerves me when a movie is not quotable. Like, I
Yeah.
really can't stand it. Like, Top Gun is quotable. That's an extremely quotable movie. Batman from 1989, that had some great quotable lines in it. Aliens, I mean, come on. There isn't a single person I know that doesn't hear Aliens and doesn't immediately hear Bill Paxton in their head going, game over, man. Game over.
Yeah. 100. Yeah. Yep.
And I'm sorry, the sheer confidence. You want to talk about the opposite of imposter syndrome. James Cameron walking into his pitch meeting, and all he does is write on the marker board, aliens. That's it.
Yeah.
Talk about a drop the mic moment, right?
Well, I mean, he's James Cameron. He also walked in and wrote Titanic. So,
Which I would bet was a harder pitch, because that was a longer row to hoe. So
yeah, and the ending. So
yeah, I know. I mean, the funny thing is, the brilliance of that movie is that it's basically Romeo and Juliet on a sinking ship.
yeah, that's true. I was watching a interview with what's his name, Tom Holland, Spider-Man,
Mhm.
right? Tom Holland,
Yeah.
and somebody asked him when he thought he would be successful, like what is success to him. And he said, I don't need the awards. Having an Oscar might be great, but then I think that Leonardo DiCaprio did all of these amazing films and has had this extensive career, and he just got an Oscar. So he's like, I'm doing okay. And I was like,
Right.
that's really great, man. I really love him.
Tom Holland seems like such a down to earth guy, but he makes the greatest point ever for what we're talking about in this particular episode. Just the fact that the fact that we're creating, I mean, it can't be about awards or money. I'll be flat honest. We were talking earlier about having our names on the screen, which I'm glad to say I can say I've had that experience, as small as it might be to the larger universe. It still feels really great, and that doing it for those reasons, and I think something else that I'd like is to have peers respect me. I'm not saying that they don't, just that I know the only way to get that is to do the work,
Right.
and and if they have a chance to experience it, what I create,
I was
and
really
they
going to make an off-color joke, but I decided to refrain. I
oh,
held
go ahead.
back.
What's stopping you
No,
now?
no, no, no. It's inappropriate.
You're talking to Mr. Inappropriate. I've said some things I wish I hadn't.
And
And
then something else that I found when we were preparing for this episode that I think you might
mm,
like.
ah,
I wanted to see what the ages were for some of these screenwriters that didn't find success until later in life.
mm,
So I found four that I think you'll find interesting. Nora Ephron, who wrote Silkwood, was
mhm,
42. David Webb Peoples was 42 when he wrote Blade Runner,
yeah,
or when he actually, this is when they sold it,
yeah,
or when the movie was made. Ron Bass was 46 when he wrote Rain Man.
mm,
And David Seidler was 74 when he wrote The King's Speech.
yeah. Oh
So,
man,
I mean, it just, I think for me, that's like a little never give up, because you don't know what your trajectory is going to be. But if you stop writing, then there's no chance for that trajectory to continue. So,
absolutely. No, I mean, never
you know,
stop creating in
yeah,
general. I mean,
yeah.
and every name that you mentioned, they've gone on to write other great movies.
Other amazing movies. Yeah.
Nora Ephron, I mean, come on, her name is synonymous with romantic comedy.
Mm-hmm.
She literally wrote the quintessential one with When Harry Met Sally, and actually
Mm-hmm.
reinvented the romantic comedy by way of that movie.
Yeah.
Um, and Ron Bass, I mean, he's written several other great movies. I want to say he wrote My Best Friend's Wedding, and
Let me see if
I'm
I can look it up real quick.
I'm not. I need to check myself on that. But I thought that opened the same weekend as Batman and Robin in 1997, and I'm a huge Batman fan. But I go to both movies that weekend. Guess which one I walked out happy from?
I don't know.
It wasn't Batman and Robin.
I didn't want to put words in your mouth,
Well,
Let's
yeah, he
see.
did write it. He did write it. I'm looking at
Rain Man, Best
IMDb.
Friend's Wedding, Entrapment.
Oh yeah, I love Entrapment. It's not a
Yeah.
well received movie, but I thought that was a cool one. And it had a really cool music score by Christopher Young, who's known mainly for horror movie scores. But he's such a dynamic composer, and he's done so much great work besides that. And he's probably one of the better chameleon type composers. And what I mean by that is you don't know his name, but you heard his music.
And you know what's really, I'm looking through his IMDb, and wow, there's a wide variety of genres in his arsenal.
And honestly, that's being dynamic. Screenwriting, I know, is a little bit tougher. If you want to write from one genre, usually they say stick to that genre, because it's really harder to be able to do other things. And I'm like, okay, but let's look at guys like Eric Roth, who is him or he wrote Forrest Gump, he wrote The Curse of Benjamin Button, and he's involved with Dune,
Yeah.
the upcoming adaptation. Now, to be fair, other screenwriters involved include John Spates, who's mainly known for working in science fiction, on science fiction movies and screenplays that way. But yeah, honestly, Eric Roth, I mean, the greatest thing about that guy is he writes life affirming stories. And if you read how he approaches, any articles about the screenplays he's written, he's very much about the heartfelt material and facing mortality,
Yeah.
which makes perfect sense given the films he's written in many ways. So, but then conversely, you've got guys like Skip Woods, who wrote Swordfish, which I think is a balls out action thriller and fun to watch. Is it an Oscar winner? Not necessarily. And he's gone on to write some high profile movies.
Sure. I don't know any of
Well,
them.
I mean, one of the G.I. Joe movies. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I mean, high profile by that, I mean, names that, they put some serious money behind it, try to build something from in terms of franchise materials. Christina Hodson, who I got I had the great pleasure to meet at one of the Austin Film Festivals. She wrote Bumblebee, and that was opening in a very crowded space that particular Christmas against Aquaman, and everybody wondered if between the two of them which one was going to tank, right? And Aquaman was the big juggernaut that Christmas season. And of course, I was proud being a DC Comics fan. But come to find out later, Christina Hodson, I mean, she's writing for a movie for which Steven Spielberg is involved with Bumblebee, since his name's attached to the Transformers movies, right? But she goes on to writing the Birds of Prey movie.
Right.
Oh my God. And that was such a kick-ass movie. And there was so much so much unnecessary vitriol last year against it. You know, a friend of mine who is a fellow screenwriter and happens to be female thought it was very much the whole male misogyny of comic book fans who were against it. And I'm like, then if that's the case, they're out their damn minds, because quite frankly, that was an entertaining movie. Kathy Yan did a kick-ass job, right? Executing and directing that film with some really great action sequences. Yeah. And I thought what Christina did was, she wrote a pretty entertaining movie, and I think she got the voice of Harley Quinn down very well. I mean, is it perfect? I mean, there's some characters in it that I think got short shrift and were more plot points than actual characters. Like the Huntress, I think could have been better developed, but that's not a criticism on Hodson. I mean, hell, for all we know, she had a much longer script, and it was,
right.
That's
what I was going to say. I'm like, you don't know what her actual intention was with their script.
Exactly. There may not have been room. I mean, honestly, when you're dealing with studio pictures, there's what you would prefer to do as a screenwriter, and then there's what you get told to do, right?
Right. 100%.
In order to get the job done. And now she's written a couple of other DC movies. I know Batgirl's one of them, and that's going to be an HBO Max feature. So, there's no, just like with actors, there's no small roles. There are no small, experiences for anyone, writing or otherwise.
Right, because you never know who's watching, who's listening, who's reading, and you never know where it's going to lead.
Exactly. Do it, and do it as well as you can, and then get better on the next one. And that's one way to avoid imposter syndrome. The rest is just, try not to spend too much on therapy if you can help it, but definitely talk to somebody.
Well, I have everyone that we talk to, so.
Right. Well.
And, half my characters have some mental health issues. That's what makes them interesting. So,
yeah,
I have therapy on my characters.
Hey, neuroses are the cornerstone of filmmaking in general.
Are those your departing words of wisdom?
I wouldn't say they're I don't know if there's any wisdom in that. Just, I would accept that as a sort of an axiom, so to speak, across the board. But if I did have any parting words of wisdom, it's definitely, did we get a quote for this week?
I do have one. One.
Maybe you should have the parting words this time.
I will, but I want to let people know that we are now on Instagram. So we have a new Instagram account. Yeah.
Rock on.
I know, we're so tech savvy over here. So, Facebook at Telling the Show. You can find us at Twitter on Telling the Show. And actually our Twitter account is actually kind of popular, which is awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
And LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn, and now we're on Instagram, and it's all at Telling the Show. And if you're like old fashioned like me, you can just email us at tellingtheshow@gmail.com. Yeah. But
remember, we're social AF.
Yeah. We're so popular. Right up there with Selena Gomez. So who is apparently the most popular on the most popular Instagram account? Who knew? Will we ever get a TikTok? No, sorry. I hate to disappoint, but we're not going to do it.
Do you really want a screenwriter on TikTok?
I don't think so. We can make some funny click-clack videos, with just clicking of keys.
Well, yeah, that's one way of doing it. If it were me, for the filmmaker in me wants to take that itch and take an iPhone and shoot something, with a filter and be get really creative with the image, and flex that, try to flex that skill or grow that skill I think grow it before I can flex it. And that's how I'd use TikTok. Vine was the same way. Just how can you use it creatively? And I
Yeah.
knew I knew some guys. One guy I know, he's directed some films, and he came from AFI. Met him through the program actually, and he did a really cool one that made it look like he was falling into water, and then all of a sudden it was just a little splash on a mat, just like a quick and very precise edit, and it was like 6 seconds of like just really cool imagery. Just, and doing things like that. I mean, we got all these tools, use them, right? I mean,
Yep.
you want to be like, you want to write one-liners and vet them out and practice them, and get feedback fast and find out how crappy they are. Hey, Twitter's your best friend.
Yeah, and it gets you used to writing in a shorter format.
Yeah, exactly. Brevity, which
Yep.
I need to learn.
But since we are wrapping up, my departing words of wisdom for this week come from Ralph Waldo Emerson, because I'm classy like that. He has said, "The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be," which is very true. Like, do you want to be a screenwriter? Well, then sit down and write, because that's the only way you're going to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, and it turns out there's a dirtier version of this, and it ties in with your words of wisdom. My the dirtier version is a credo that came from the Marines, according to a friend of mine, but I always heard it from my grandmother, and I'm paraphrasing her on this, but she'd say, wish with one hand, work with the other, and see which one gets you results.
I like that. I love that.
Yeah, the Marine version has, a few more expletives deleted, but yeah, I mean, we learn by doing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my motto: learn by doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what our next episode is going to entail, because we are both supremely busy, which is amazing, but
it's good, but we've got some other, I mean, on the horizon. I'm hoping to bring in a couple of guests that are some friends of mine who've worked at the craft and have executed and have something tangible to show for it. So I'm trying to put out those feelers, and you've got a few people you've reached out to as well. So.
If you know anybody, that this is just a general call, I would like to do an episode or two on the art of comic book writing, in that whole genre. So if you have any friends or contacts, tell them to reach out to us, because we would love to explore that. And I know you would like to do one on music composition, or so, you can explain what you would like to explore.
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, it goes outside of the idea of screenwriting. But if anything, creating for the visual image, as motion pictures are, there's plenty of opportunity to bring those in. People who do that. I like the comic book writing one, because I have some friends of mine who actually have published their own comic books, and we actually know somebody from our program who recently graduated with what they call a transmedia project, and it was an actual graphic novel. And that's somebody I hope that we can bring on here and talk about their process, compared to the art of screenwriting, and see what their value out of it is. And that brings up the idea of, like, at some point, when can we talk to somebody about the art of adaptation? Because that's, that tends to be a very specific striation of screenwriting where it can be a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna continue to delve into the hard topics as well as the fun ones. So, keep tuned in. Tell your friends. If you want us to be sponsored by Jaguar, I wouldn't complain. But
if we can get a sponsorship from, I don't know, Celtex or Final Draft, that'd be groovy. But and if you guys are listening, we love your software. Can you hook us up? Like, they haven't been hit up like that before.
So in case you wanted to know this, I have a colleague on the road who is just starting out. He's a comedy writer, and he's been successful as a stand-up comedian, but now he's starting to write it down into more formatted genre kind of stuff. And I showed him the Final Draft program, and he's like, "Oh, this is really, intuitive and blah blah blah." This isn't a commercial, by the way. This is like real life experience. And so I was like, you know what? Let me find out if there's like a discount code or something I can get for you. So I reached out to Final Draft tech support, customer support. They sent him an email. That's all I need to do was give Final Draft this guy's email, and they sent him a discount code. So now he owns it, and I didn't get anything out of it, but I felt like I made that connection, and that was cool. So
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you helped a writer out. I mean, if anything, used to be the biggest hurdle of learning screenwriting was the formatting,
yeah,
when it really should have been figuring out actually everything else, right? But Final Draft definitely makes the formatting piece a hell of a lot less challenging. That's for sure. And I'm glad that you were helping out a comedy writer. Anyone knows that writing is rewriting, it's a comedy writer,
yeah,
a stand-up comedian
for sure.
especially.
And I gave him the one comedy scene that I feel like is pretty funny, and he did not laugh at all.
It's hard to make a comedian laugh. I mean, if you get really good at it, then yeah. I mean, that's a
But
tough racket.
I feel like maybe I should give him a sex scene that I've written, and maybe that would be funny.
Just tell him that. The fact that that line right there, maybe I should send you a sex scene. Then he would laugh, I'm sure. Just it's timing. It's all about timing.
It's all about timing.
You
I'm
know what?
funny. It just doesn't translate to the fingers.
Well, okay. Careful how you say that. That's
This
just
is
one.
not like Podcast After Dark.
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, I'm glad you said it was a comedy scene, not the sex scene that doesn't translate to the fingers. And oh god, and here's where I start thinking I'm funny, and that's dangerous because as soon as you think you are funny, you're not, right?
Right.
So, and you have to be very careful when you're mixing comedy and other subjects, right? So, but you know what? At least, I mean, you can find humor and stuff, and I think there's ways to execute on that. But conversely, I would find it. I don't think I would find it any easier to write a comedy scene versus a sex scene, to be honest. I don't like the idea of writing sex scenes anymore anyway, because I don't think they help any of the stories I write, for one. I mean, it isn't the 80s anymore, so gratuitous scenes like that aren't going to exist, for one. There's going to be, if you're going to have it in there, you're going to have to, really, there has to be a reason for something to be in a screenplay. And I think as a man, I think in this, environment, as a heterosexual male, I'm actually, and a white heterosexual male, sorry to be so, political on it, but I think I have to be much more careful about the scenes I write from an intimacy perspective, I think. Because if the goal is anything more than storytelling, then it's just too easy for it to be dismissed, or more, at best, at worst, being called out on it, by somebody who felt offended by it. That's a concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a shame we have to be so cautious and so guarded, but we do in this time. So
absolutely. And comedy is the same danger zone, if you think about it.
Yeah, I think comedy can get away with more.
It's all in the exception, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's definitely
it's really easy to offend, anybody, and depending upon the sensitive subjects.
But I feel like that's a topic for a whole other episode.
Yeah. Did we start recording in the next episode, or
yeah, let's just split this one into two.
Yeah, you could always edit this out.
No, we do. This is what you get. What you get is what you get. Words of wisdom. So like we've said, reach out to us because we would love to hear from you. And the emails that we've received have been amazing. So thank you. And let's just run through the list again. Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, or old-fashioned email. Reach out, tell us what you think. Even if you don't like us, you could tell us that too. I'm open to that.
That's opening a can of worms, but okay. There's one place we're not, is MySpace, and I just, I don't think we need to go there.
No column, no TikTok, no MySpace. Yeah.
Yeah, and no, we're not doing any OnlyFans content. Sorry.
Nope. Sorry. But yep, this will be live tomorrow, so yeah, it'll be out on all of our outlets, and you'll get the link to the quiz and the test. Let us know how you fared on that test. What number did you get? That would be interesting to know. And episode ideas, log lines, you name it, just reach out and keep an eye on our social media outlets so you know what our next episode is about.
Absolutely. We want to help you. We want to grow with you. We want to learn from you. So definitely reach out. And on that note, I would say party on Wayne, party on Garth. But, we don't have that kind of salutation here just yet, Denise. We need to work on that.
We need to work on that. I could do a really cool Beavis.
Am
I dating myself?
No. Cut it out, Beavis.
We got to go.
Nice. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this Time Warp from the 90s was brought to you by Telling the Show.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great week.
Have a great week. Stay safe out there, folks, especially over Labor Day weekend. Thanks very much.
Good night.
Good night.